Good afternoon, everybody. Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm one of the application engineers here at Cadtek Systems. I'm just going to take the next kind of 30 minutes or so to go through a demonstration that I prepared just to show how SolidWorks is currently being used within the furniture industry. I understand a lot of people that are watching it today are within the furniture industry, and it's nice to kind of have a look to see how SolidWorks is suitable for that kind of thing. What we're going to be doing during the next 30 minutes is actually creating the desk that you see on the left-hand side there. The image that you see has actually come out of SolidWorks. It's using PhotoView 360, which is our render engine. So that's a rendering of the actual CAD data that we're going to produce. And then we're just going to kind of populate it with a few props, i.e. The screen and the kind of computer and the phone and stuff like that. And then we're going to create the rendering itself. So we're going to have a look at doing that all in the next kind of 30 minutes or so. So within SolidWorks, we start with sketching as you would with any good designs. You can see there are a couple of sketches. You know, certainly how I start with designs, just a kind of overall sketch to give me an idea of scale perhaps and how we're going to actually create some constructional stuff. But obviously with SolidWorks, it's nice and clear. You know, we get some clear drawings out of the end of it, and we're able to lay down dimensions and things like that, unlike some of the sketches that I may have created or seen. So how we're going to start is actually quite basic. We're just going to create some kind of simple blocks here to actually create the panels that we would assemble to make the finished item. So that's what we're going to do first. So let's have a go at creating some of those basic shapes there. So over in SolidWorks, I'm just going to open up a new, or create a new part. So we're just going to create a new part. You can see here we've got a series of different templates. In SolidWorks we can create parts, assemblies, and drawings as well. So I'm just going to double click part, and that's going to take me into the part environment. You can see I've got nothing going on at the moment. I haven't started anything, but I just want to bring your attention to these three work planes. So these are generic work planes that we get within every part and assembly within SolidWorks. It holds my top, my front, and my right plane. And all I'm going to do really is use those planes. If any of you guys are using AutoCAD, same kind of process. So I'm actually going to use 2D methods as you would do, so sketching with lines and squares and circles, polygons, those kind of things. And then at the end, I'm going to do something to turn it into 3D geometry. Either I'm going to stretch it, or maybe I can spin it around an axis, or I can send it along a path, all of which then would create 3D geometry. So actually on my front plane, I'm just going to select it and then sketch on it. So all of my sketch tools within SolidWorks are up on this tabulated toolbar up here. We have a tabulated toolbar basically, excuse me, because we have so many different tools in SolidWorks that if you had all of the tools out, you wouldn't have any workspace. So we try to maximize our workspace area over here, and then we can tabulate the toolbars to actually have lots of tools at our fingertips. So you won't actually see me picking too many tools out of this bar up here. I prefer to, in the work area, just use my right-hand mouse button, and that actually brings up a shortcut bar that I can fully customize, and I can add any tool I want onto there. So if I'm using a tool more than others, I'll drop it onto this, just so I'm not presented with bucketfuls of tools every time I'm trying to sketch. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just draw a representation of the front view of this particular item. So it looks something like that. It's kind of square shaped. I'm just going to say that I'm just going to add a few dimensions here. For example, this is 1275 high, so let's just change that to 1275 high. So this is in millimeters at the moment. I'm just going to say that this is 1300 wide. So what I'm doing is I'm just selecting lines, as you can see here, and just adding some dimensions to them. Unlike AutoCAD, I can actually just kind of sketch things without having to fully dimension them or apply dimensions before I've actually drawn it. I'm just going to say that I want my origin to be in the middle of my line there, and then that actually kind of locks it into position. Now what I'm going to do is just to draw a center line. Now a center line is actually going to help me because I can use it. If I've got any kind of symmetry in my part at all, then I can actually use that to save myself a lot of time at the end of the day. So what I'm then going to do is just to draw a line. This is just going to denote my border, so my outer kind of frame is about there somewhere. I'm just going to select both of those lines, and then I can actually create a mirror. So as you can see now, it's actually dropped it onto the other side as well. Then I'm just going to add a dimension here. So we're looking at about 150. This is kind of for the side cheeks, if you like. And all I'm then going to do is just to draw in the thicknesses or the panels that I'm using. So there's my deck. There's the kind of desktop, if you like, to it. Then we're going to have another panel down here. Then we're going to have another panel around here somewhere. Maybe we're going to have another one around here, and maybe about there. So you can see I'm doing this kind of roughly. I always describe this as like sketching with a pencil, because I'm just kind of getting it down, and then I can actually start to apply some dimensions. First thing I'm going to do is just to set a relationship that all of the thicknesses of these panels, so these are representations now of my, I'm going to use say 18mm MDF for this. So these are representations of that MDF. So what I'm just going to do is to select those ends, and then actually just set a relationship between them that just says that they're equal. So all of them I want to behave together. So if I just do that, and I can actually set them to be equal. So now you can see they're all exactly the same size. Also, I'm just going to draw in a couple of other side cheeks as well. Just one here and one here. And again, I'm just going to set a relation that those two thicknesses are the same. This just means that if I want to change it from, say, 18mm to 15mm MDF, then I've only actually just got one dimension to change, and it's this one that I'm just plonking down now. So that's 18mm, and I'm just going to specify that the distance there is also 18mm as well. Okay, so you can see I've got some blue lines and some black lines. The black lines have been fully defined, so that's basically where I've applied some dimensions. But you can see the blue lines, I can still kind of move these around. So all I need to do then is just to apply some dimensions. So I'm just going to say from the top of my desktop down to the bottom of the floor is going to be 950. And then I'm just going to specify some distances. So maybe the gap here, this is going to be for a shelf, a drawer is going to go in here, and the top, that's going to have a distance of, say, 170. And then it's going to have two drawers actually. So the drawer underneath, I'm going to have that one slightly bigger actually. We'll go for, say, 295. And then a distance from the kind of top down to the bottom. So this is, I'm going to have like a kick plinth or something like that. We're going to say that's 100. And then finally that just leaves this over here. So that's going to have a distance of 650. All I'm then going to do is just OK it then. And if I just give it a spin and a twist, you can see that it's actually just a 2D sketch but in a 3D environment. All I'm then going to do is just tell SolidWorks which of these areas I want to actually turn into panels. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to sketch onto my front plane again. And I'm going to create my cheeks, my side cheeks. And that's 150mm across there, so I'm actually going to have to make this kind of like a simple, very simple box, if you like. So the first thing I'm going to do is just to come in here and draw my sides of my side cheeks. Then I'm just going to specify that those two ends are the same, so they're equal, and then I can just dimension this one at, say, 18mm. And again, I've just set the relationship between the two just so that I can change one dimension if I have to do that. And then all I'm going to do is extrude them. So I'm going to extrude those two shapes. And if I just send it back the other way, I'm going to send this at 750mm, and that's then my first kind of lump of geometry, if you like, that's been created. And over here it's giving me a full list. And this is like a history tree of what I've done so far. So I'm just going to single click that or double click that slowly, and that allows me then to actually change that particular name. So I'm just going to call this side cheek. And I guess if anybody else picks up this model tomorrow or at the weekend or whenever, they can actually see that that side cheek has actually created that. So very quickly they can see what's going on. Next thing I'm going to do is just to sketch onto this surface now. Now that I have flat surfaces, I can actually sketch onto them. So I'm going to sketch on there, and then I'm going to do a bit more panel work. So again, I'm just going to draw the thickness of my panel. So at the bottom it's going to be flush. At the top you could see there that I've actually just left a small gap. So I'm just going to again specify that the thicknesses are exactly the same. I'm just saving time then if I need to change them. That again is 18mm thick. And I'm just going to have a distance from there to the top of about 6mm. Just to give myself a nice little rebate on the top there. And then all I'm going to do, again, is extrude it. And this time I'm going to extrude it. And instead of putting in a distance, I'm just going to say up to a surface and then select that surface. So needless to say, if I increase the depth of this is currently 750. If I increase that at any point or decrease it, then this is actually always going to end up on that surface. And also I'm just going to untick the box there that says merge result, because I actually want to create what we call a multi-body part. Historically, this would have been drawn up as an assembly, but we can actually draw this up as a part now because we can split off each of those bodies and create individual technical drawings for those, maybe to go to a router or something like that. So what I'm then going to do is just tell SolidWorks that this is what we call a weldment, which is basically the term for a multi-body part. Now actually this particular feature that I've just created here, I don't want it flush at the start. Again, I want to incorporate this kind of rebate here. So I'm just going to edit that feature, and instead of actually sketching or sending the extrusion from my sketch plane, I'm just going to offset it. And again, I'm just going to select 6mm. You can see it's actually offset it the wrong way there. So I'm just going to flip it, and then that's our next part. So there's another body that goes in here. I'm just going to sketch that onto this face, and this time all I'm going to do is just to pick up, and you can see that it locks onto endpoints and midpoints and things just like it does in we'll call it any other CAD, shall we? And then we're just going to extrude that, and again we'll go back the other way 18mm. And then on the back we're going to do exactly the same, just to create that little infill panel there. And then again I'm just going to extrude it back inside the box, 18mm, and we're done. So that's my first kind of side cheek created. I could now start fixing this together if I wanted to. I'm actually not going to do that at the moment. I'm just going to show you how we can use library features to actually do that in a bit. So what I'm then going to do is I'm suggesting that this is made up maybe of MDF and then it's post-laminated or it's pre-laminated MDF, it's up to you. But I'm actually just going to draw in my laminate as well. So I'm actually just going to sketch onto this surface and sketch my laminate. So it depends on how particular you want to be. I know a lot of people don't actually include the laminate in the technical drawing, but I think it can be best to sometimes depending on what you're doing. That's just going to be 1 mil. And then on this face, I'm just going to sketch another piece of laminate as well. So again, I'm just going to pick up on that end point, come down to the bottom. And this then just covers up any joins with a nice piece of laminate. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do, I actually want one of these side cheeks on the opposing side. Now, to save me having to do all of that again, I can actually utilize some symmetry here. So if I just select my right plane, you can see that it sits bang in the center of my my part at the moment. And then all I need to do is actually just create a mirror. And I can select a series of bodies to mirror. So I'm just going to drag a selection window over all of those bodies, and you can see that really, really quickly it's created that on the other side for me as well. I'm just going to give this thing a backstop, so I'm just going to sketch that onto this surface here, and my kind of back panel is just going to span the whole size of this. And that's actually going to be a bit thicker this time. We're going to use, say, 35mm timber for this. And then we can get to work on some of the internals, so I can actually start creating some of these cross-member panels as well. So to do that, I'm going to draw the profile onto here. And you can see that because I've already got them, I'm just going to sketch over them. So if I just pick up on some of these points, I'm going to have my desktop, I'm going to have my plinth as well, and I'm just going to extrude those out. And this time again, I'm not going to set a distance as such. I'm going to say that I want them to be offset from that front surface there, and we're just going to put in a dimension of, say, 50. So again, if that changes, this gets bigger, that's always going to have a distance of 50 there. I'm just trying to think of what changes might happen, I guess, in the future. Then I'm going to sketch onto this surface. So that's on the back surface again, and I'm just going to pick up and create a couple more side cheeks, the interior side cheeks. And again, I'm going to extrude that. And again, I'm going to use the offset from surface command. So I'm just going to select this surface here. I'm going to go for a slightly smaller offset this time. So we're just going to say the thickness of the material, so 18mm. In fact, while we're there, I can actually draw in this panel here as well, if you see. So I can actually go back and edit the sketch that created those side cheeks. And then I can actually create that one as well. So if I just pick up on my rectangle tool or my square tool, I can actually just drop that in, rebuild it, and you can see it's actually created that panel as well then for me. Then I want to create these cross-member panels. So again, I'm going to sketch the cross-section onto that back panel, and then just pick up an intersection here. I'm going to take it over to here. That's my other shelf over there. And finally, we've got this one here. And I'm just going to extrude that. And I'm going to say up to surface this time, and then just pick my side cheeks. So they'll be flush at that point. There's a couple of other panels I need. I'm just going to sketch my plinth cover onto that face there. So again, just picking up on some sketch lines that I've already created. And I'm going to send that back 18mm as well. Okay, so if I just hide off my initial sketch, you can see that I've actually created all of my panels now from my particular design. So let's go back to the, in fact, before we go back, I wouldn't mind showing you how we can actually use library features to fix some of these things together. So if I just hide off that particular part, that's the laminate, and I'm then just going to isolate these two particular bodies. So that's just showing the two panels there. I can actually use library features to actually create fixings. So if it's the same kind of fixes that I'm doing over and over again, perhaps I'm using dovetails or box joints or biscuit joints or anything like that, or dowels, I can actually reuse these features because I don't want to have to be doing it time and time again. So I'm just going to change the displays just ever so slightly so you can see inside the parts. And then I'm just going to dip into one of my libraries. So in my woodworking library, I've actually got different ways that we can create fixings or joints between the things. You can see we've got different types of corners, for example. I'm actually just going to dip into here because we've got biscuits, mortise and tenons, for example, but I'm looking at dowel pins because I'm going to dowel this together. Now to use one of these features, all we need to do is to drag this from here and then just drop it onto my model. And then all it's going to do is it's going to ask me to select these particular points here that you can see, hopefully you can see those where you are, on my model. So basically I'm having to pick the top right-hand corner, so that's that corner over there. Then I'm picking this face, which is this face, then that bottom edge, which is that bottom edge there, and then the top opposing corner, which is this one over here. And then you can see it actually creates those dowels, and I can create or different dimensions here. I can affect the spacing, I can affect the dowel length, and I can affect the dowel diameter as well, and also clearance for those particular parts as well. So if I now just accept that and just change my display again, I'm just going to exit that isolate. It doesn't actually look really much like much is going on, but if I actually just isolate that one particular panel, you can see it actually created the holes for my dowel pins as well, and all the dowels are in there too, which is great. Okay, so let's just bring back all the other parts. So I could go around there and I could fix up the rest of that if I wanted to as such, but I'm not going to bother. So all I'd like to do now is just to go back over to the presentation. So you can see, just creating very simple steps here, we can create the that geometry that you've seen on screen. Next, we're going to have a look at how we can document our design, so how we can actually create 2D technical drawings of our designs that we can maybe pass on to other people. So all I'm going to do first of all is I'm just going to set the material. At the moment the material hasn't been specified. Now I guess what's quite important is that everything I'm showing at the moment is standard, basic, cheapest level SolidWorks. So there's going to be one thing I'm going to do at the end, which is creating the photorealistic image, and that's in our mid-level package or our top-level package. That's called PhotoView 360. That's our render engine. So all I'm going to do first of all is just to specify a material. So I'm just going to edit the material. If I choose one of my custom materials in here, I think that I have MDF. So MDF, and it's also got the specified density of MDF as well, so I can actually evaluate the weight of this thing. So first of all, I'm just going to apply that particular material. You can see that it actually turns it into we're in a strand bore, so OSB, but we're going to come back and change that anyway in a second. We're going to make it look like a nice warm-up laminate or something, or veneer that we're going to put on there. So the first thing I'm going to do before I just go to the technical drawing is to just look at my cut list. Because I've actually done this as a multi-body part, SolidWorks has created a cut list and it's identified all the panels that are exactly the same. So all of these particular panels and groups of panels are exactly the same. So it's grouped it and it's able to create a cut list for me. I can actually create a bounding box as well, and the bounding box basically looks at the largest X, Y, and Z dimensions of all of those particular parts, and then I can actually document that in a table. So first of all, I'm just going to save the part. So it's just prompted me to save it here. So I'm just going to save this onto my desktop for now. We'll call this reception desk. We'll call this desk. Just give it a quick description. So maybe this is a reception desk. And then I'm going to create an A3 drawing of it. So obviously this is a template that I've specified with a SolidWorks logo on here, but this would be your existing drawing border. If you're already using AutoCAD, you can just save it as a DXF and import it straight into SolidWorks. You can have your company logo and stuff like that on there, obviously. So what I'm then going to do, you can see over here, it's pre-populated it with like predefined views of that particular item. So what I'm going to do is drag my front view across. We'll have a front view about there somewhere. Above that, we'll have a top view. To the side, we'll have a right view, and then we'll have an isometric view over here. Now, first thing I'm going to do is just to change the scale, because I'd like to see a bit more of that. So I'm just going to change that to, say, 1:16. And I'm also wanting to see inside of it as well, because you can see at the moment my hidden lines aren't being shown. So if I select this view, I can ask SolidWorks to show me the hidden detail. This one, I'm not interested in seeing the hidden detail. It's just a reference view, so I'm happy to leave that shaded. We'll just take the color away. Then I'm going to ask SolidWorks to fully dimension this technical drawing for me. Now I could do this manually, but actually I've already done it in the model. So all I'm doing here is asking SolidWorks to actually fully dimension this technical drawing for me using the dimensions that I've placed in my model. So you can see here that it's actually got quite a lot of dimensions. It's put every single one down that's required. Possibly I don't need all of these, so I could come in here and you can see how easy it is just to select particular dimensions and just to remove them. So there's quite a few here that aren't particularly useful for me, I don't think. Again, I'd probably leave them all on if I was doing this in anger, but let's just get rid of a few of these. And there's a few dimensions there associated with those dowel holes as well, so we'll just leave those off for clarity at the moment as well. So we'll leave those ones on there for now, but you can see how easy it is just to kind of drag around dimensions until you're happy. There's another couple of views that I think would be useful on this particular drawing. I think a section view might help. So let's just create a section view right through the center of that. You can see it labels it properly for me as well, section AA. Perhaps some detail views might be quite useful as well. So the first detail view, maybe this little area here, for example. So I just draw a circle over it. I can maybe drop that down there. I can just change the way that that section view is displayed, for example. And I can change the scale as well. So let's just change that to, say, 1:4. And again, it's labeling it properly for me too. And I can take that over there. Perhaps we'll just take one more detail view, perhaps of the dowel detail, something like that. And again, I can just take that up there, change the way that's displayed. Again, change the scale, so we'll have that at 1:4 as well. And again, it's labeled it properly for me too. So very quickly you can see we can create some pretty concise technical documentation. Now all I want to do is now to create a table to show me what panel sizes I need for this. And if I just drop that down there, so I'm going to zoom in, that's actually showing me a length as well. If I was using profiles, this would actually show me the lengths of different profiles that I need, but I'm obviously not, so I'm just going to delete that particular column. If I just make that a little bit smaller, and I can drop it onto my drawing, you can see here that it's actually broken it down into item numbers and quantities of the description. So obviously it says plate here, you can see that, but that could say panel, it could say MDF, it could say whatever you like. But importantly, it tells me the thickness that I'm using and the largest XY dimensions, so I can actually give this to somebody and they can get a cut list for me ready without having to interrogate and manually interpret a technical drawing to create one. And then all I need to do really is to come in here and then create some balloons. So if I just create some balloons for that, we'll drop them down to the faces. And again, if I was doing this properly, I'd probably make it look a bit more pretty, but you can see here that it's really quick to actually create pretty concise technical documents. Down here, this has actually filled itself out as well. As you can see, any descriptions that I've added, the current revision level that we're at, the weight of this part, so that's quite important. In MDF, this currently weighs 88 kilos, and then who I am and today's date. So this has all filled itself out as well, so you don't need to manually do that, which is great. Okay. So what we can do is then review these or publish these, because I want to share this perhaps with other people in the organization, or maybe I want to send this to suppliers. So what we can do then is to save it as what we call an EDrawing. Now an EDrawing is very similar to a PDF in the fact that it's free to view. You don't need to pay for it unless you put it on an iPhone. So again, another giveaway there, that you can put this on your iPhone. It's $1.99 on iPhone, $6.99 on iPad. But this is EDrawing, so everything you're about to see you can actually do on your phone. So we can do things like shade it, unshade it. We can take measurements. Now we can disable that if you want to protect IP, for example. You can disable the function of being able to measure it. We can write on it as well. So gone are the days where I was signing people's drawings off that you would print them out, you would write on them, you would scan them back in, and then you would email them back. Nowadays, we just write on the technical drawing and we send it back. So again, we're just saving a lot of processing, a lot of time. And again, we've got a series of stamps as well. But the best thing about this of all is the fact that we don't actually just have a 2D technical drawing. You can see we've got a 3D model there that we're able to spin around. And remember, you can do this on your phone. So EDrawing's hugely powerful communication tool, really, really useful. Okay, so let's just have a look at making some changes. Obviously, revisions are a key part of the design process unless you get it right first time. So what we can do is make changes really, really simply. Now, because the very first thing that I did, I actually sketched a front view, if you remember. So all I need to do to make any changes is actually just start dragging some of these numbers around. So probably maybe I want it a bit longer, perhaps, or I want it a bit taller, perhaps. So again, I can just take some of these dimensions and literally just start stretching them to change my design. And when I do that and go back to the technical drawing, that's actually changed as well, as you can see. So all I'm actually going to do now is let's just take that back to how it was before. So let's just edit that. So let's just shrink it down. Now this is a fully parametric model, and that's what allows me to be able to do that. There are other CAD packages that won't allow me to do that, but certainly SolidWorks allows me to create a parametric model. So that just means if I need to make changes, it's a really simple process to be able to do that. Okay, so then we can create or add, I should say, appearances to our model. So we can do things like add realistic finishes, i.e. wood grains, or graphics, as you can see that I've added here to this computer screen. So let's just have a look at how we can do that. First thing I want to do is just to open up my color wheel. In here I've got lots of different materials. You can see I've got plastics and metals, for example. If I look in my wood collection, so that's under organic, and in wood I've got, let's make this out of walnut. And in then walnut, we've got lots of different types of walnut, so it's not just one type. We're going to use polished walnut for this, and I'm just going to drag that from here and drop it onto that body. And you can see then that it turns it into a walnut appearance. Now I can come back and I can actually change that as well. I can maybe make it a bit smaller or bigger, depending on how I'm feeling. So first thing I'm going to do is then just to copy that appearance, and then I can paste it onto other panels that I want to be that appearance as well. So just by simply pasting it on there, so all I need to do now is just to come through my model and paste this onto all of those bodies. So it takes me a couple of minutes just to do that. And then all I'm going to then do is to actually color my, this is like an inlay detail. Now I was using a Formica not so long ago that looked a little bit like one of our patterns. We've actually got like a waffle pattern here. So if I just drag that onto there, then I can take that and I can then actually just change it. I can make it bigger or smaller. I think the scale looks something like that. And then again, I can do exactly the same. I'm just going to need to make that significantly smaller. And again, I'm just going to try and marry those up actually. So if I make that a little bit smaller, then it's something like that. So that doesn't look too bad. And then all I'm just going to do is copy that appearance, paste it over here, and paste it over here. This is just then going to mean when I do some rendering, it's actually going to look like what it should do in real life. Now I can obviously change orientation of grain direction and stuff like that as well, which is great. Okay, so let's now take this into an assembly and add some of the parts. So I can add, for example, nuts and bolts. Now we actually have a library of nuts and bolts. That doesn't come in the standard version though, unfortunately. That comes in the mid-level and our top level, but that has all the kind of nuts and bolts and widgets and washers that you might expect from your own toolbox. But we can also add props or other ancillary items like, for example, handles. So if you have like Hayfley or anything like that, you can download 3D CAD data from there and actually use it straight in your models. But also props as well. I find it quite useful for rendering, so phones and computers and things like that. So let's have a look at how we can actually do that. First thing I'm going to do is just to make a quick save, and then I'm just going to create an assembly from this particular part. So I'm going to create a new assembly, drop in my desk, and then I can add some other components. So the first thing I'm just going to do is add a new part, and I'm going to drop it onto that surface there, and then I'm just going to draw in my shelf front, or my drawer front I should say. Now if I was doing this in reality, I'm obviously going to leave some clearance around there, but just to save some time I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to extrude that the other way, maybe a bit of a different material this time. We'll use 15mm. So that's one drawer front. Then I'm just going to insert another drawer front. I can actually draw that onto this one here, so that just make sure that I've got the levels right. And again, I'm just picking up on some existing geometry here, so just picking up on some endpoints. As I said, I would use clearance obviously in reality, but just to save time here. So now I've got a couple of drawer fronts, and I'm just going to specify that I want them to look like my walnut as well. So I'm just going to paste that particular appearance on there. And then for the next bit, I'm just going to hide off my actual desk, because what I want to do is to add some handles to here, but I'm going to be quite clever with them, because when I bring in my handle, it actually does something as well. So in my library, I've actually created a furniture library here with things like computers and printers, telephones, but also handles as well. So I'm just going to bring in this handle. You can see here that I can snap those handles straight away to the front of those shelf fronts, and then I'm just going to do a bit of placement. So first of all, I'm just going to pick up on one of my work planes. I'm just selecting a work plane from the two handles and marrying them up together. So basically when I start moving them, they're going to behave together. Then all I'm going to say is that what's nice with SolidWorks is if I want to center things, I can select a series of 4 faces. So you can see the ones that I'm selecting here. If I select 4 faces and ask SolidWorks to place a mate for that, it actually centers them up, which is great. It just works out what the center should be, so I don't have to do any manual calculation. So you can see now that the only direction that these things move is up and down. So all I then need to do is just to specify maybe a distance from the center holes. So to do that, I'm just going to utilize perhaps that plane there and that surface there, and then I can place a mate with a distance of, say, let's go for 75. So 75 distance from the top there, and I'm going to do exactly the same with this one as well. So if I just specify or pick my top plane there and that one, I can have a mate that is a distance of 75 again, and I can always come back and change this obviously. Okay, so that's my handles placed. If I try and move them now, it won't let me because I've got mates in there that are constraining them. But I actually want to do things with the handles. I obviously need to cut some holes in my panels and add some fixings on the back there to keep those handles in place. Now, because I've done this before, and I'm likely to be doing it time and time again if I'm designing furniture, I can actually save that particular function or that feature away. So if I just select it now, this is what I've done kind of in Blue Peter style. I've done it before. all I need to do is just to click on that little star you see there, and then this is what it's going to do. It's going to populate the model with a washer and a nut, but also it's going to create a hole for it as well. And all it's asking me to do is to select the back face here on my model. So if I come over here and I select that face and click OK, you can see that it's actually populated it with a bolt and a washer. And also if I just open up that part on its own, you can see it's created the holes for me too. So I've just saved myself a load of time there by reusing that particular feature. And I could go and do the same for the other one at the bottom, but I'm not going to bother. So then I just need to bring my desk back and then start populating it with some other things. So first of all, let's just have a printer. Maybe we'll have a printer in that gap down there. Perhaps we'll have a computer tower. We'll drop that down there. We'll move that around in a second. We'll have a computer screen maybe on the top there. And again, we can move these around in a second. And then finally, we'll just have a little telephone. Okay, and then I'm just going to look at it from the top and then just start moving some of these around somewhere. So we'll move that over to there. We'll move this over as well. Just spin that a little bit, I think, just to rotate it. Not sure telephones look like this anymore, do they? But and then all I'm going to do is just to bring that tower into place, push the printer back a bit, and that's my model in populated. So really easy to use library parts and props as well. So then all we need to do is to render it, and this is using PhotoView 360. So this is in our mid-level or top-level package. So all I actually need to do, first of all, is just to add a bit of perspective, just to make it look a bit more realistic, and then under my Office products is to launch my PhotoView 360, and then under render I can just preview this. Now gone are the days where when I first started doing rendering, you'd kind of hit the render button and you'd go home, and if you were lucky you'd come back in the next day and you'd have something. What we actually get now is a preview of roughly what it's going to look like. So you can see it starts out quite rough, but it's getting sharper and sharper, and the longer I leave it to render, the sharper it's actually going to look. So again, in true Blue Peter style, this is an image that I created earlier. And to create this, if you were creating that at HD, so that's 1920 by 1080 pixels, you're probably only looking at about 4 or 5 minutes to actually create that. We can actually drop that into realistic environments as well. So this is an image of a park bench that I designed for one of our customers. And again, we can drop it into like a courtyard environment here, just to kind of use some of their more advanced lighting techniques. So in summary, SolidWorks is an all-in-one solution. We've had a look at creating simple parametric parts. So that just means that I can literally kind of drag things around and they all stay where they should do. We can reuse library features and parts. So if we're using parts from Hayflay or Skiffy or Components Direct or Alexander Industrial, anything like that, then we can use their CAD data and actually use it in our models, because we don't have to model it up again. And also we can reuse repetitive tasks. For example, creating holes for my handle and adding nuts and bolts and things like that. We can actually get SolidWorks to do that automatically. We've also got automated drawings. As you could see, we've got section views and detail views that are created really, really simply. We can also use our materials database. That's in every version of SolidWorks. We have that SolidWorks materials database, and we can customize that and add custom materials as well. So if you're using material that's not in there, if you can find from the spec sheet, for example, density, and we can get SolidWorks to evaluate the weight. If you can find other information on those, then we can actually do stress testing on single parts as well. So we can do stress testing on single parts down in standard view information as well. So if you want to do any stress testing, we can do that. We can also create cut lists as well, so looking at the panel sizes that might be required. We're also able to do weights and calculations, including center of gravity, so that could be important for some of you. And we can also create then photo view rendering, which is the photorealistic images, and just be aware that is in the mid-level or the top-level package there. So why choose SolidWorks? Well, we've got over 2.25 million users now worldwide, within 185,000 companies in over 80 countries. So it's a huge product used by a vast amount of people. Why choose Cadtek? Now, we're a reseller of SolidWorks. You can't buy SolidWorks directly. You have to buy it through a series of resellers, us being one of them. Why choose Cadtek? Well, we've actually just been awarded #1 in Northern Europe for customer support satisfaction, which is something we're obviously really, really proud of. So if you did want to go down the route with SolidWorks, hopefully you'd feel comfortable in coming with us and helping you with that journey. So what's next? If you want to see any more, we actually hold nationwide SolidWorks seminars and hands-on test drive events as well. So if you just want to come and watch, you can do that. If you want to have a play with the software as well, you can do that too, and we can take you through a series of kind of real-life demonstrations. If you want to get involved with that, give us a call, 01663 741 405. You can also visit the website www.cadtek.com or give us an email. That's info@cadtek.com. Okay, so I will bid you farewell. I hope that you found something that I've shown maybe interesting. Please let us know any feedback, good, positive, indifferent, but I shall leave that with you. Thanks very much. Have a good afternoon, and I'll see you very soon.